Marketing research is defined as the systematic design, collection, analysis and reporting of data and findings relevant to a specific marketing situation that may be facing the company. Marketing managers often commission formal marketing studies of specific problems and opportunities. They may request a survey, a product preference test, a sales forecast by region, or maybe an advertising evaluation, for example. It's the job of the marketing researcher to produce insight into the customer's attitude and buying behaviour. Marketing insights provide diagnostic information about how and why marketers observe certain effects in the marketplace and what that means to marketers. Most large companies have their own marketing research departments and may also outsource for specialist services such as observation labs. However, it doesn't matter whether you are Pizza Express or Baravin. All companies will or should invest in marketing research to ensure that they stay relevant and also are aware of their competitors' activities. Effective marketing research follows 6 steps. 1. Define the problem and research objectives. 2. Develop the research plan. 3. Collect the information. 4. Analyse the information. 5. Present the findings. And most importantly, 6. Make the decision. Defining the problem and objectives can be really tricky. It's important not to define the problem too broadly. Let's say, why aren't people buying pet insurance so much these days? Or you could be defining it too narrowly. Why are males aged 25 to 30 in Birmingham not buying cat insurance? So it's important to strike a balance. What exactly do you not know right now, and what information would really help you to move your marketing plans forward? To design a research plan, we need to make decisions about the data sources, the research approaches, research instruments, sampling plan, and contact methods. First, let's take a look at data sources. The best way to find out answers to the research problem is to ask your market. We need to collect information about our customers, but also our non-customers. It's important we don't only talk to people that know us and like us, we need to talk to people that don't use us. To better understand our customers and non-customers, we need to interact with them and collect our own information. And that's why it's called primary research, because we are collecting it ourselves for our own purposes. We undertake primary research to fill the gaps when existing information can't answer our specific questions. Using existing information is known as secondary research. Think of it as second-hand information. You didn't collect it. Secondary research is research that's already been collected and conducted for some other purpose, but it could still answer your research question, or at least a good part of it. If I was doing the marketing for a coffee shop in Aberystwyth, this piece of secondary research on what time of day customers tend to visit provides some great insight. But with over 24,000 respondents, it would have been really expensive for me to have carried this out myself. Primary research will use either qualitative or quantitative methods to collect data. Which approach you use depends really on what you are seeking to find out and for what purpose. Similarly, of course, you could have obtained secondary research that was driven by either qualitative or quantitative approaches originally. Qualitative research relies on small samples. It uses open and often unstructured questions to uncover underlying motives and feelings. Analysis of the data focuses on the meanings behind the responses. Qualitative is typically used where the purpose is to gain insight and understanding. Data is collected through activities such as interviews, focus groups, observation, and creative approaches such as word association or projective techniques and brand personification. An example of that would be, if Amazon was to come alive as a person, what would they be like? Quantitative research, however, relies on predetermined, standardised questions. These are asked of a large sample. Quantitative research involves collecting the information and then quantifying the responses as frequencies, percentages, and descriptive statistics. It is much more structured and used where the purpose is to identify relationships between things or simply objective information about customers. Data is collected through activities such as online surveys or face-to-face surveys or automated telephone responses. These may contain open or closed questions. Open questions like how or why elicit fuller answers, but can be more time-consuming to analyse. Because closed questions aren't just yes-no questions, they too can gather a reasonable amount of insight. With closed question types, there's lots of flexibility. At its most basic, yes-no questions are known as dichotomous questions. There are only two possible answers, yes or no, or black or white, or whatever the two choices are. But then we may have multiple options that could be selected, or indicate preferences on a scale of 1 to 5, or put things in rank order. Open-ended questions, however, can get even more creative. These are more generally used in qualitative research, although could be used as part of a quantitative survey. But as the quantitative survey samples tend to be very large, it would be quite time-consuming to analyse the responses. Once you've chosen your research approach, you need to think about your sample plan. This is important as it plays to the validity of your findings at the end. Was your sample, the people that you asked, a true cross-section of the population? That's known as random sampling strategies. Or was it a more purposeful approach, justified by the aims of the research, known as non-random sampling strategies? So in one, random samplings might just be, I take every third person in the phone book beginning with B or whatever, whereas non-random will be, I specifically want to speak to finance directors in corporate 500 companies. So you've got a very focused idea of who it is that you want to talk to, as opposed to just anybody that could help you. An interesting approach is known as snowball sampling in qualitative data collection. So here, each respondent recommends who would be good to talk to the next, and so the snowball gathers, and by the end of the process you've maybe spoken to 20 to 30 people, but you didn't know who they were going to be at the beginning. There are three considerations when you're putting together your sampling plan. The sampling unit, who should we survey? The sampling size, how many people should we survey? And sampling procedure, how should we choose the people that we want to talk to? We've mentioned validity a few times. The reason being is we want to be confident that what we found out in our sample can be generalised to the broader population that it was drawn from. This is one of the main differences between quantitative and qualitative research. The latter gives you detailed insight, but with its small sample size and more subjective questioning, it's hard to say that everyone thinks that. Whereas with its large sample, more representative of the population and objective in its questioning, the findings from quantitative research are more generalisable. That said, if we surveyed 5,683 people, the results are more likely to be indicative of the population than if you interviewed maybe only 8 people. So although quantitative research, because it's more objective, is more generalisable, quantity, and therefore the scale of how many people you spoke to or contacted, is what determines its generalisability. The more people whose opinions you've got, the more likely it is that it's going to be indicative of that population. Technology has a large part to play in the gathering and subsequent analysis of data for marketing decision making. For example, helping you with mass online surveys or rapid statistical analysis, or collection of big data, which is really very much behavioural data. Also, things like software to track the user focus on a web page is another great example of the role of technology in marketing research. Once the data has been gathered and analysed, it's then time to present the findings. This should be structured to reflect the research problem and objectives that were agreed in step 1. Marketing management articulated a problem that needed information to solve it, and here you're presenting that information, your findings. Now, step 6, you need to act on that information and decisions need to be made. Here's a really interesting case study. Operating in more than 70 countries worldwide, DuPont commissioned marketing studies to uncover personal pillow behaviour for its Dacron polyester business unit, which supplies filling to pillow makers and sells its own Comfortable brand. Respondents fell into distinct groups in terms of pillow behaviour. The findings showed that 23% were stackers, 20% were plumpers, 16% were rollers or folders, 16% again were cuddlers, and smashers who pound their pillows into a more comfy shape made up 10%. The findings were very interesting, and the prevalence of stackers led the company to sell more pillows packaged as pairs. So this is a really great example of how insight into how a customer is using your product can really help you to be able to have a product that resonates with the market. So when a stacker is wandering around a store and they see packs of 2 pillows, they're more likely to buy those than to buy 2 separate single pillows. And often, of course, it's cheaper to buy things in pairs. Once the research is complete, the company must measure and forecast the size, growth and profit potential of each market opportunity. Sales forecasts are used by finance departments to raise the necessary cash for investments and operations, by the manufacturing department therefore being able to establish capacity and output levels, also for purchasing to acquire the right amount of supplies, and for human resources to hire the necessary number of workers. Marketing is responsible for creating sales forecasts grounded in many things, including marketing research. Get it wrong and the whole company will face excess or inadequate resources, whether that's finance, operations or human resources. If you've said that the sales forecast based on your research means that we're going to sell X number of things and that number X is large, the whole organisation will then gear up to deliver that. So if you're wrong, you've then got a lot of wasted resource. Companies can often prepare up to as many as 90 types of demand estimates for different product levels, different geographical space levels and different time periods. And each market demand measure serves a specific purpose. Whichever market you're looking at though, the size of the market hinges on the number of buyers who might exist for a particular market offer. However, there are many productive ways to break that down a little bit further to make it more manageable. The potential market is the set of consumers who profess a sufficient level of interest in a market offering. Although remember from the session the other week, interest is not enough, they must have the ability to pay for it. The available market is the set of consumers who have interest but also income and access to a particular offer. The target market is the part of the qualified available market that the company decides to pursue. For example, BA pursues a different target market to Ryanair. The penetrated market is the set of consumers currently buying the company's product. So I know the size of my penetrated market, I know the size of the whole market, and I may be now looking to that target market to quantify that to say this is what I could have. Total market potential is the maximum amount of sales that might be available to all firms in an industry during a given period under a given level of industry marketing effort and environmental conditions. A common way to estimate total market potential is to simply multiply the potential number of buyers by the average quantity of each purchase times the price. So if there are 2 billion smartphone users and they buy an average of 3 apps a year and the average app cost is £10, what's the market potential? 2 billion times 30 is a bit too big for me to figure out, but it is the sum of 2 billion times 30. So that gives you that gives the company a feel for the total market potential. This is what is out there. This is what maybe myself and my competitors have all got a share of. Because companies must allocate their marketing budget optimally along their best territories, they need to estimate the market potential of different cities, states and nations. 2 major methods to measure area market potential are the market build-up method, used primarily by business marketers, and the multiple factor index method, used primarily by consumer marketers. The market build-up method calls for identifying all the potential buyers in each market and estimating their potential purchases. An efficient method of estimating area market potentials makes use of the statistical classification of economic activities in the EU, NACE, N-A-C-E, which stands for Nomenclature des Activités Économiques, and consists of a 6-digit code. It produces accurate results if we have a list of all potential buyers and a good estimate of what each will buy. Unfortunately, this information is not always easy to put together. Like business marketers, consumer companies also need to estimate area market potentials, but because their customers are too numerous to list, they commonly use a straightforward index, a single factor. However, it's rarely a complete indicator of sales opportunity, so you arrive at a multiple factor index method. For example, the Brand Development Index, BDI, is the index of brand sales to category sales. Consider a machine tool company that wants to estimate the area market potential for its wood lathe in Greece. Its first step is to identify all potential buyers of wood lathes in the area. To use NACE, the lathe manufacturer must first determine the NACE codes that represent the products whose manufacturers are likely to require lathe machines, then check through all the companies with those codes in Greece, and perhaps maybe mail them a questionnaire as part of the research to understand the current demand in that area. Conversely, in the consumer markets, many companies compute area indexes to allocate marketing resources. Suppose a pharmaceutical company is reviewing the 6 cities listed here. The first 2 columns show its percentage of EU brand and category sales in these 6 cities. Column 3 shows the Brand Development Index, BDI, the index of the brand sales to category sales. London has a BDI of 114, because the brand is relatively more developed than the category in London. Paris's BDI is 65, which means the brand is relatively underdeveloped there. Many companies choose to belong to and contribute data to trade associations who publish market share reports. Market research firms also compile statistics that companies can obtain by subscription. Besides estimating total potential and area potential, a company needs to know the actual industry sales taking place in its market. This means identifying competitors and estimating their sales. And things like trade association and industry sector reports, whilst often actually expensive, can provide incredibly valuable insight. Companies commonly prepare macroeconomic forecast first, followed by an industry forecast, followed by a company sales forecast. The macroeconomic forecast calls for projecting inflation, unemployment, interest rates, consumer spending, business investment, government expenditures, net exports, and other variables outside the control of the organisation. The end result is a forecast of gross national product, which the firm uses along with other environmental indicators to forecast industry sales. The company then derives its sales forecasts by assuming that it will win a certain market share of that industry. But how can a company forecast that market share of that industry? They may create their own or buy in forecasts from outside sources, such as marketing research firms, which interview customers, distributors, and other knowledgeable parties. However, all forecasts are built on one of 3 information bases: what people say, what people do, or what people have done. Some examples of information sources are firstly a survey of buyers. Do you intend to buy? And you can see the scale in the table there. When buying interview is impractical, the company may ask its sales force to estimate their future sales. Companies can also obtain forecasts from experts, including dealers, distributors, suppliers, marketing consultants, and trade associations. Firms can develop sales forecasts on the basis, of course, of their past sales. That is at least a known, isn't it? When buyers don't plan their purchases carefully, or experts are unavailable or unreliable, a direct market test can help forecast new product sales, or establish product sales in new distribution channels or territory. That would involve primary research, going out and asking people.